What's up, YouTube? Today I wanted to talk about the Order of the Assassins. And essentially, this was a Shia sect of Islam. Typically there's just like there's Protestants and Catholics, there's Shia and Sunni, and they kind of been beefing for a while, which I think is really stupid. Ultimately, one thing in the Quran that Allah says multiple times is when He's talking to Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that He says your job isn't to convert people. Your job is to just say say the message and then move on, right? And so, you know, lakum dinukum waliyadin. In the Quran, ultimately, if you disagree with someone, whether they're Muslim or they're not Muslim, or they're this sect or they're that sect, it's not your job to change them, to harm them, to hurt them. It's really just your job to say your opinion and then move on. So, that's as political as I'm going to get as far as it goes, because I'm not going to talk about the politics. So essentially, what is the Order of the Assassins? Just like the name, they're a Shia group. They were small and they were kind of the major Sunni group. Kind of they beefed with each other, and the Sunnis are the majority of Muslims, and even today they are. They originated in Persia or Iran as today, and that's where he had a stronghold. It was kind of like a fortress. It was led by Hassan al-Saba, and later on moved to Syria. And interestingly, even today, there's still a pretty big, sizable, Shia population in Syria, as well as obviously Iran, mostly Shia. Um, in that divide, we still have it going on today in the Middle East, and it's affecting the politics more than people like to believe. Um, but just like the name says, they were the Order of the Assassin. So what do they do? Oftentimes, in unconventional warfare, when you have a small army, small people, you have to do other means in order to compete with the bigger armies. And so obviously that's where the assassinations came in. But the group is a lot more than that. And so why am I talking about it on a spiritual based channel? Because a lot of the things that they did and that they talked about um, are also what's on my channel. And so, there was a lot of legends regarding the Hashashins, including the fact that, that's how you say assassins in Arabic. And one of those things is, hashash, like hash or hashish, right? It's weed kind of. And they said, oh, they smoke weed and then they go and they don't have fear and kill people. So that's not true. In Arabic, hashashin, hashish can mean basically any type of plant, really anything that's kind of green, any plant essentially. And so I believe that they used plants in for various, I take a lot of supplements, a lot of natural supplements. So am I hashashin? Probably, right? So, it doesn't mean that they smoked weed. There's this weird rumor that they got the assassins, to do what they wanted to do by getting them drugged up and then putting them in a garden and making them believe it's paradise. Okay, a lot of these things aren't true. But what is true, and there's actually people who are still part of this order, right? And there was a podcast about a guy who does this, is that they would fall under the category of Sufis. And so what do Sufis do? They do mysticism. And so one of the techniques that they did was they used astral projection. They were big into numerology, psychic abilities, stuff like that. And now, how does that apply to warfare, for example? How does that apply to assassinations? Well, I mean, it applies heavily because, you know, um, today in the modern times in the CIA, they have Operation Stargate. The Nazis were big into occult. Since really the beginning of time, people have used spirituality or aspects of spirituality, whether that be numerology, whether that be finding the Ark of the Covenant, whether that be understanding numerology or understanding XYZ, in order to use it to gain power. Now, I mean, how could astral projection help you in a war situation? Well, if you want to assassinate someone, you want to locate them, you want to astral project to them, right? I mean, if I can astral project and go through a wall and and I can be like, hey, here's their room, this is what it looks like, blah blah blah, this is my technique, this is what we're going to do to kill this person, right? If I need to find someone and I'm using psychic abilities to find them, or know their tactics, or know what they're going to do, or know how they're thinking, I can use that to my advantage. And so there's a reason that a lot of following organizations kind of copied off of exactly what the Order of the Assassins did. And a lot of these organizations are pretty open about that, including the CIA, which literally takes they have a document. I mean, a lot of this is declassified. They have a document that literally states the techniques that the Order of the Assassins used. Um, Even now, I mean, even when they were looking for Osama bin Laden, they were trying to find astral projectors or remote viewers, as they call them. Again, there's an interesting documentary called Third Eye Spies, which talks about this. Um, but so how does that apply to this video or what I'm talking about? Well, it just goes to show that it's not just like new age spirituality or like people out there saying this stuff exists. It's really, it's used in warfare in the past. I mean, all the way from the beginning of time until today. I don't like to say the word occult because occult just means hidden, but yeah, it's lesser known information that people can do this. And to a certain degree, why is this not for everybody? Why isn't it like taught in schools, or why isn't it like common knowledge? Because ultimately, if people are going to use something just as much as people can use something for good, they can also use it for bad. So I think there has to be a certain natural level of secrecy involved in any of these type of practices. Um, but there was a member who considered himself today part of the Nizari Ismaili sect, which is another name for the Order of the Assassins, but stated that they just fall under the category of being Sufis. And one of the interviewers, he asked them, do you guys use weed? He says, we use weed as a sacrament. And what does sacrament mean? It just means like something to help you meditate in order to, reach God. Some Sufis do that. That's a way lesser. I mean, all religious people, you might use drugs, whether that's shrooms or whatever, to put them in another meditative state. But that's kind of the lesser, you know, percentage of people. But one of the things he said is that they're not a group that does assassinations or acts of warfare. The times have changed, but they're a group who might do philanthropy, like might donate to a certain organization, or might do this to a certain organization, or might help them in this organization. And one of the things they talk about is that they're very open to all religions and all practices, even some that would fall under the category of paganism. And the reason for that is that what this guy in particular said, who is a member, what in modern day, what he said is that there's 99 names of God, just like the Jews have 72 sacred names of God, both add up to 9. But he will say, okay, so if someone's praying to this God, we'll say, oh, well, this is one of the 99 names of God. You know what I mean? So it's a kind of an interesting thing how they portray that. Obviously, there's a lot of video games out there. The number one is Assassin's Creed, which kind of made this group popularized. But one of the interesting things is with the Order of the Assassins, and I had a commenter want me to delve into this, is when you look at the story, basically the main concept of why some of these characters had their third eye open, right? They call it eagle eye in the game, but you can kind of put your 2 and 2 together, is that they share genetics with an alien race. And now I don't want to talk too much about this because it's really people start to kind of like get lost in this concept. And one of the things in the Quran is it sort of leans towards the idea that there was alien races, and that's not something odd to think about. But one concept within spirituality is the concept of star seeds, and that if people are gifted spirituality, maybe in their past life they were of the alien race, and that they get put down in a human soul body, after they die, whatever, in order to raise the consciousness of the earth that we live in. And so you kind of look at some figures throughout history who seem to be exceptional. Maybe Hassan al-Saba. I mean, people would say that, he used to astral project to people. He would use a lot of occult measures to get to his enemies, and a lot of it was just psychological warfare, which is sometimes more effective than actual violence, because when you kill someone, you piss them off and they want to get revenge. When you psychologically disturb someone, right, like one of the things Hassan al-Saba, they claimed that he did to one of the leaders, Saladin, was that he would go in his head and cause them terrible nightmares. And one of the things you can do in astral projections, you can go into someone's dreams, right? So it's like psychological warfare, right? Maybe he was, doing some black magic, some left hand magic. That's not something I want to go into or that I practice, but um, spirituality has always been used as a tool, whether it be for good, whether it be for bad. But to kind of go back with like someone like Hassan al-Saba, I mean, someone who's gifted like that, and kind of what the games were insinuating is that they might have some star seed in them, or they might have been an alien race from a past, and maybe they were put in this position in order to protect, the group people who were Shia. Not that Shias are special, not that Sunnis are special, not that anybody in the earth is special, but ultimately nobody deserves to be killed based on their religious beliefs, and this is something the Quran tells us. Nobody deserves to be killed based on their nationalistic beliefs, and nobody even deserves to be killed if if they're an atheist and don't even believe in God, right? Because ultimately it's not anyone's job to say you're wrong, you're right. You can express your opinion, but it's not your job to physically change them or physically attack them. I mean, if you have disagreements, you got to work that out. Um, but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with this video, is just that these concepts, astral projection, numerology, such and such, you go to, you know, I, you can look up in the time of even Adolf Hitler, they had a whole segment of their military that was dedicated to a cult, right? I mean, you have the Order of Assassins, you have intelligence agencies of today. So this is something that still exists. It precedes even religion. I mean, not precedes religion. It transcends religion, in that people might use spirituality for religion. I might say, okay, well, you can astral project to connect with your ancestors, your spirit guides, and get good information with them. And then someone with other motives might say, oh, okay, well, you can also astral project and go into your enemy's dream and torment them, and or find them so you can assassinate them, right? So in other words, spirituality transcends even just religion. It transcends just, it seems like it's really popular today, new age spirituality, which I don't really fall into. I don't really follow that too much, but it's something that really transcends. And so when people call it fake, or people call it this, or it doesn't exist, if you want to not participate in it, that's totally cool. But when people call it fake, I just think they're really stupid, because there's libraries of text that go back since the beginning of time, of extremely intelligent and extremely successful groups of people, and people themselves who implemented this, including the intelligence agency of the country I live in right now, and arguably the strongest country in the world, right? So it's something that is interesting. Just wanted to touch base a little bit, in regards to the games and how they portray the story of how these people were special, and why they could open up their third eye, in kind of broaden it a little bit. But I didn't want to go too much into aliens and stuff like that. I'd recommend looking up starseeds if you want to know more about that. Thank you.